Live stream audio check, 3, 2, 1. Hi, Councillor Young, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Well, you're coming through on the transcription, but I can't actually hear any audio. I think Jonathan's just going to have a play around with the settings.
Okay, thank you.
Give it another try.
Hello?
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 Yep, that's perfect.
Okay,
Lovely.
thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
live. Good. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you here on this nice warm evening. Thank you to members of the public who are attending in person and those watching online, and councillors and officers. I'll begin with a little bit of housekeeping and just read out the actions in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, but if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the Town Hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Runwald Street. In the case of any disturbance which requires the Cabinet to withdraw from this room, councillors should withdraw to the Mayor's parlour using the doors behind me and await further advice. This meeting is being streamed live over the internet on the Council's YouTube channel and will also be available to listen to afterwards. And we will look to have breaks at 90-minute intervals as we go along. The use of mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, by visitors is welcomed, but you're requested to use them discreetly and not to disturb the meeting, to set them to silent and not to use voice or flash camera functions. Speakers are reminded that microphones are to be used at all times. And I shall just begin by introducing the work of the Cabinet. For the benefit of members of the public, I would like to explain that the Cabinet is the main executive body of the Council. It is responsible for day-to-day decision-making on all Council services and also makes recommendations to full Council on major policy decisions and on the Council's budget. The Cabinet is made up of 8 councillors, each of whom is responsible for a particular range of services. And I'll begin with introductions. I'll introduce myself, then we'll go around that way. I think we'll go around that way. So my name is Councillor Paul Dundas. I am the leader of the Council and the portfolio holder for strategy, and I represent Tiptree Ward.
Good evening. I'm Pam Donnelly, Chief Executive.
Good evening, Hayley McGrath, Service Director Governance.
Richard Clifford, Democratic Services Manager.
Good evening, Anna D'Alessandra, Interim Section 151 and Chief Finance Officer.
William Sunnox, Portfolio Holder for Resources and New.
Councillor Luxor Vaughan, Ward Member for Wivenhoe and Portfolio Holder for Planning and Sustainability.
Councillor Rhys Smithson, Portfolio Holder for Housing and Ward Councillor for Tiptree Ward.
Alison Jay, Ward Councillor for Highwards and Portfolio Holder for Economic Growth, Transformation and Digital.
Martin Goss, I look after the bins for Colchester and also neighbourhoods and leisure.
Councillor Darius Laws, Portfolio Holder for Culture, Heritage and Environment, and I'm a recycled Cabinet Member. There we go. I also represent Rural North Ward.
Thank you, David King, Deputy Leader, Communities, LGR and other matters, also, I guess, recycled.
Thank you. It's good to hear this Council's commitment to recycling is being seen wide and far. We'll move on with the agenda, and item 2 is the election of a Deputy Chair, and I would like to begin by proposing Councillor David King as our Deputy Chair. Would somebody like to second? We've got 2 seconders there. All those in favour? Congratulations, David, Deputy Chair. Thank you. Next item is urgent items, which I understand we have none.
There are none, Chair.
Thank you. And item 5 is minutes. I'd like to invite the Cabinet to approve the minutes of the meeting of 11th March 2026. Are we agreed with those, or has anybody got any comments?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. And item 6 is decisions reviewed by the scrutiny panel. I don't believe we have any, is that correct?
We don't, Chair. We just need to do declarations of interest, which might have been missed off your list.
If they have been missed off my list, but I can see them on item 4. My apologies. So, declarations of interest, do we have any? Councillor Smithson.
Yes, until recently I was a board member for Amphora and all of the commercial companies, so I was involved in the decision-making process for the items that will be presented tonight. It's a non-pecuniary interest.
Okay, thank you. I think we've had that noted, correct? And is that all? No others? That's fine. Thank you very much. So, moving on, we move on to Have Your Say. We have a number of speakers this evening, so welcome. And our first speaker is Robbie Spence, who's going to talk about the new waste and recycling service. So, Robbie, you're welcome. Format is you have 3 minutes to speak. There will be a bell sounded after 2 to warn you you're getting near the end, and then hopefully you'll have a reply and you have 1 minute afterwards to respond. So, welcome.
Thank you, and Councillor Dundas and Cabinet, and especially Martin Goss on bins and Darius Laws on recycling. I have come to talk about the wheelie bins, and particularly about the fact that Coulters has got a one-size-fits-all policy around giving 77,000 households a big black 180-litre bin and a big green 240-litre bins. That's 420 litres of big capacity outside everyone's house, regardless of whether you're a single person like me, who doesn't produce much landfill, or you're somebody who's got a family with cats and dogs and cat litter and nappies and all the other stuff that makes it a bit hard to have a one-size-fits-all policy. I've got my prop here. This is a 10-litre bucket, so imagine everyone's going to have 42 of these capacity outside their houses, even in Maidenberg Street, or I don't know, actually, I know it's not going everywhere, but everybody, even in tight streets, will have these big bins. Now, I've been asking about this since I heard about it at the beginning of the year, and I've discovered a couple of things. One is that Braintree Council, and I'm going to quote from their website because they've got a frequently asked question on this, they're going to give people the choice of 2 different sizes. They're not going to give everybody one size fits all. They're going to say that once the new service starts in June, we encourage everyone to use the system for a few collections to get a sense of how it works. After this, residents who feel that they need more or less recycling capacity will be able to apply for adjustments, and full details will be made available later. So one of my questions is, well, why can't we be like Braintree and give people a choice? And my second question is, following on from that, is that we are going to be in with Braintree in a year and a half time or something like that. We're going to be a super authority with Braintree, Colchester and Tendring. And then will I be able to apply for a smaller bin then? Because I'll be in the same council that's giving out smaller bins. And my third question is, on the website, on your website, there's a lovely picture of a bin man with a little slim green, because with the green waste, the brown bins that you give out for optional, people can opt in and pay for it, you can have 140 litres, which is smaller than the new black bin, or 240. So I would like to say, well, can I have 2 brown slimline bins, and I'll paint a big black house number on one, so it's landfill, and a big green house number on the other one, so it'll be recyclable, and then I'll have the sort of capacity that I need. So yeah, there's three questions really. One is, why can't we be like Braintree already? What's going to happen when we are in with Braintree? And why can't I have 140 litres bins instead of these big ones? Yeah.
Thank you. And congratulations. I think that's the first prop we'd had your say for some time, so it's good to see it. So I think, Councillor Goss, would you like to reply?
Yeah, thank you. And we've obviously been in correspondence previously about this, and appreciate you bringing this into the public domain so I can give some facts. The first thing is, actually, you didn't mention tendering, and tendering collects rubbish in a different way to Colchester, in the same way that Braintree has just changed to 3 weekly collections for black sacks. And I think I've been publicly quoted as saying, whilst there's breath in my body, that will not be happening in Colchester whilst I'm the portfolio holder at this stage. However, what happens with elections and LGR going forwards, maybe I won't have any breath and I'll be retired. But in all seriousness, bins are not going to be integrated overnight, because they're 3 separate organisations, and having worked in the private sector for many decades and been through many takeovers and acquisitions, etc., it probably takes 5 years to integrate any kind of organisation. And bringing together 3 different councils that do things in different ways. For instance, tendering is outsourced to Veolia. So there's a contract there to deal with, which I think was extended for 3 years, whereas Braintree and Colchester is in-house. But we collect on different frequencies. And in fact, Braintree has about a gazillion bins, from what I can see, which is causing even more confusion in Braintree than it has been here. So we've tried to simplify that process. So just because we all come together as a marriage in 2028, that is not going to integrate all the bin services just like that. In the same way, it's not going to integrate complex IT platforms, which is my background, or any other services, whether it's finance, procurement, because all of them are slightly separate, but it will happen over time. So to answer your question, I have always been really clear with officers that we need to keep a uniform service but allow flexibility, and Colchester has always been a very flexible authority. So what we've done is from September to March 2027, that will be the rest of the bin rollout across Colchester. And at this moment in time, officers are going out assessing every street and also taking on board where we get worries, where people are saying we can't take wheelie bins because we will potentially be leaving people on black sack. Like you couldn't put the Dutch Quarter onto wheelie bins because it just wouldn't work. So, and possibly some areas of Newtown, like New Park Street, where, you know, it's straight out onto the pavement and you can't even get bin lorries down there. So places like that will have to be different. But, and in terms of bin capacity size, we've finished rolling out wheelie bins for this phase of the trial, and we are allowing people to get used to their new bins and the sizes that they've got. And already we've identified that where people have larger households or they are prolific recyclers, they're already running out of space from the 240 litre wheelie bins. And I have always been clear that we need to offer 360 litre wheelie bins or 2 wheelie bins or whatever it is we need to do to ensure we offer the right amount of capacity. And out of the trial that's happening at the moment, that will feed in to changes in the future. So that will come in the future in the same way that we can look at flexibility in the size of bins. That said, we have a business case and we have strict financial guidelines on delivering that business case. So we can't give everybody a ton of flexibility in every size bin they might want, because when you're going out to procurement and spending millions of pounds on a complete change of new vehicles, new bins, etc., new ways of working, you've got to have some form of uniformity in that procurement exercise to deliver best value for money to the taxpayer. Because ultimately, although we're not charging people for this, we are paying through taxation, either directly or indirectly or through council tax. So the bottom line is we will look at flexibility going forwards and we will give clear guidance on how we will be delivering that and how people can request it. But at the moment, it is a one size fits all to roll them out, and then we will look at flexibility going forwards.
Thank you, Councillor Goss. Mr. Spence, you have 1 minute to respond.
All right, well, I heard you say that you will look at flexibility going forward, so that's great. And I mean, I guess I just came along because I know what the council policy is. I know you've had consultants. I know you've done all your costings and everything. I know that. But if there is a possibility that you're going to be flexible in the future, well, then at least I feel like I've planted a seed, and that's great. And I just wonder, in that flexibility, I mean, it occurred to me, well, do people actually pal up with neighbours to use less bins? Or I mean, is that, I don't know, if I don't see it happening on my street, but it's great to hear that there are flexible options coming down the line. And the other thing I forgot to say, I'm sorry, was, well, there are all these green boxes, aren't there, with the ones for the glass and the ones for the tins, and there'll be 77,000 of them, or 744,000 or something. I just wonder what's going to happen to them as well. But thanks for listening. I mean, it's a great answer, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the green bins will be up to individuals what they wish to do with them. I'm sure they can make handy receptacles in the garage for keeping things in, plant pots, whatever, or, you know, even maybe planting some plants in them. I'm sure there's lots of ingenuity out there.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Sir Bob Russell. Sir Bob, I won't worry about telling you the procedure. I think you've probably got the hang of it by now, so you're very welcome.
First, Chairman, congratulations on becoming leader of the council. And secondly, to thank you that your first significant executive decision was to halt the sale of St Meadows Nature Reserve, Country Park, call it what you like. And thank you for the letter that you sent me on this subject. However, I'm still left with two serious questions, which is not for you to answer, but somebody needs to answer. When was the decision made to sell Simbley Meadows? And two, who made that decision? I hope under your leadership, sir, the council will be more open, less secret, more transparent in future. Because not only were the public not told about the disposal of Simlin Meadows, but my inquiry suggests that the vast majority of councillors were oblivious to it as well.
Thank you, Sir Bob. I'll try and answer some of that myself. First, you're absolutely correct. We have pulled the sale. I think the Chief Executive can confirm that instructions have been given. I think I'll begin by explaining a little bit about the assets policy the council our approach they're taking. There's no doubt that we do, as a council, have quite a lot of assets we are getting a very poor return of investment on, and most of them have strategic value. They're often commercial properties or things we've owned for a long time and nobody can quite remember why we owned them. And in such cases, it does make sense because I liken it to a situation where we have a lot of money stuck in an old building society earning 1%, and what we need to do is take the money out and put it in something which is earning 4 or 5%, and that's what we're trying to do to bring down the budget costs and improve the finances. But there's also strategic assets, and my feeling is that Simlin Farm, because we always have to be careful which piece of land we're talking about. We're not talking about all the meadows, we're talking about the farm, which are adjoining the meadows, but it's not quite the same thing. I think it does have a strategic element to it. The decision, I believe, was probably taken via the Assets Oversight Group. There was an assets oversight group which was part of the executive of the council, and I'll come to that in a minute. But I do just want to talk about Simlin Farm and what we're going to do with it. We were getting a very poor return on investment on it. I can't get into the exact figures because they are confidential in nature, but for its value, we were getting a very, very low rent on it. So we do need to look at how we can improve our return on it, simply to balance the books, because we have a figure in our budget which depends on improving that. But we're going to go back to first principles on it, and I don't believe that's going to involve selling it. I'm going to keep our options open slightly because there are some parts of that site which you would describe as brownfield. They've got buildings on them, there are properties, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that the council may look to dispose of, you know, a building somewhere which is not relevant to the actual greenfield part of it. So we have to keep our options slightly open. But what we're looking for, we want a plan which is going to improve our return on investment. Ideally, I would like to see public access improved a little bit down there, because I think it's an asset which we don't really promote, or not that many people know is there. And we would like to actually ideally improve the nature aspect of it as well. So we've got some quite good ideas, I think. There's some discussions going on. What we're going to be doing in future is we have set up the LGR Oversight Panel, but that's not a great title for it, and this is a public committee, because it's also going to be looking at some of our assets. Both acquisitions we might have come through disaggregation of Essex County Council assets and disposal. So there's going to be much more of an opportunity for the public, I think, to be involved and actually give their opinion on what we're doing with our assets. But on Simlin Farm, it's off sale. I am not at all sure we can secure the future of that by selling it. I don't want to sell it. I don't think we're going to sell it, but we will be looking for plans as to how we manage it in the future, because it's not also just about money, it's about stewardship, because we actually have to have somebody down there looking after that land. It's being farmed at the moment, so we need to make sure that we've got a tenant there and everything's working out. On what's happened in the past, does anybody want to comment on that? Or David, do you want to say anything? Or
Well, I think we have to take responsibility, and as a former leader of the council, I do, for the fact that this was so poorly communicated. It was never how it came across, but how it was taken was, I fully understand. The comms here were frankly awful. It was always about the buildings and the farm, the brown field, never about the meadows and the public space, which many of us love, and some of us have supported. So that's perhaps a little bit of help. So that's down to the administration of the past. But I want to be very clear that we do have a track record, not as has been suggested, of selling off the green jewels in the City Council's crown. We're going to look after what we've got, and our approach to LGR is going to be very much around that central principle of being fit and ready for transition, and that will include keeping the very best that we have. So one last thing, I think, or a point of clarity, because I've seen some exchanges in which people have asked is there a political uncertainty about the decision to hold on that sale? I'm very clear that there is not. It was the first joint decision, I can say that, Paul. You were very clear, and rightly so, that this is what you wanted to do, and I was equally clear. It was an easy conversation that that was the right thing to do, to hold. What we've got to do is do the work now to find a way ahead that we can describe in a public arena and give confidence, which was damaged, there's no question, give confidence back to the public. And for me, it's all about productive stewardship. So thanks.
Thanks, David. Sir Bob, would you like to come back for 1 minute?
Well, I started off by asking who made the decision to sell it and when. And at the moment, no councillor or councillors have acknowledged that they made that decision. So I'm intrigued as to when the decision was made and who made that decision. As the assets of value, whatever it was, that's an interesting one, because I reckon you could flog the Castle Park for quite a packet, and also Highwoods Country Park. You're on a very slippery slope when you start talking Simblin Meadows as being flogged off to balance the books because you've cocked up at Northern Gateway. Well, not you, the previous administration.
Can we just be clear for the record, Sir Bob? All of those suggestions are absolutely, never were, and are not the approach of the last nor the current administration. It is a hard fact that we have a duty to make the best of the assets we've got. We're not talking about green space and its sale. We're talking about assets which we can secure, as the leader described, a better return. That's legitimate. It will be done in an open way, and we'll look forward to seeing you, no doubt, at that committee when it does its business in public.
Thank you, Chairman. I look forward to seeing the list of assets that have been looked at for sale. The full list. Let the people of Colchester see what this council has looked at in the past to sell, not just Simblin Meadows. What other assets have been looked at?
Sir Bob, we're not and never were selling Simblin Meadows. That is a misrepresentation that's been corrected repeatedly.
I've seen the advert which refers to farmland near the A12, etc. You cannot separate the farmland from the nature reserve. It's one entity. It was bought by this council to save it from future development. You decide to break it up. There's no such farm as Simblin Farm. No such farm as Simblin Farm. That's a made-up name.
Thank you, Sir Bob. And just for the record, to make it clear, this council is not going to be selling off any pieces of green land, particularly places like Castle Park, where that's ridiculous. That's not going to be happening. And final comment, actually, I've had a text, Bob. Mark says turn your phone on, by the way. Right, next we have, I think it's Jove Larenty, if I pronounce it correctly. Mr. Larenty, you are very welcome. You're going to be speaking about King Edward Quay. Yes. You have 3 minutes. A bell will sound after 2 as a warning, and then you'll have 1 minute to come back at the end. Thank you.
Okay. So I do understand that we are in difficult times as a nation and Colchester financially. When we arrived at King Edward Quay about 5 years ago, it was overrun with drug activity, the constant menace to the residents, the boat residents, who paid their taxes to the council and also had all their insurance and all their paperwork. The quay can seem quite safe when you're there in the day, but if you go there at night, there's all kinds of accidents, boy racers trying to do 100 miles an hour, constantly crashing, drug dealers, drug takers. It's a very difficult area, and armed police have been called on many occasions while I've been there. And while we were there, we tried to transform the place. We've got our child here. So we planted flowers, and we had a professional mural made, and it changed. It changed over 4 years. The boy racers went. The crime seemed to go down because we were there. We're liaising with the council, with Amphora. We were liaising with the police, and we seemed to make a good effort to change the place. And we were invested in the community, and the combined vigilance of the residential boat owners. We used our WhatsApp to make communications about the situation that was going on outside. The council then suddenly decided to raise the rents of residential people by 500%. I haven't seen that anywhere else. It's that, Most of the boat owners have already been driven off. There's hardly any of us left now, and they did this with a sort of a very brief and not really careful analysis of other marinas. Those marinas have got laundry rooms, restaurants, security so that people aren't predated on, fences and cameras, and a whole range of marine facilities, which King Edward's Quay doesn't. It's a crumbling quay with shopping baskets, and it's completely uneven, and there's a sewage works, and there are boy racers outside, and there are people doing drugs outside, people screaming and shouting at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's a completely inappropriate an irrelevant way to sort of, to try and find a rent. So I understand that also that some of the costs of the sinking boats that were blamed on the residents there. These boats were bought and put there by squatters, and it seems quite unjust that the victims of these squatters should be blamed for the costs. We asked Culture Council and Amphora many times to please police these squatters. Can you just take them away, because living next to them is dreadful. And that never happened, and then their boat sank, and now those costs are being blamed on us. I'd like the councillors to have another look and an appropriate to look at the facilities that we don't have and try and make a costing, not 500% increase, which is unsustainable for us. We can't afford it. We'll be driven off. I'm a former location manager, and I've tried to bring some big productions to this place, and I'd like to stay here. I love this place, and I'd like to see this city grow, and we are invested in it. So thank you very much.
Absolutely perfect timing there. Would anybody like to pick this up? William, as portfolio holder for resources.
Okay, the short straw. It's not going to be the answer you want to hear. We have no money, and this is something where we should stick with the previous administration's decision. The problem to me is not so much the rent. It's a ground rent, isn't it? You have to produce your own boats, which is sort of comparable to equivalent places. It's the environment and what's going on around it. And a lot of what you say is stuff that should be, it sounds as if the relationship with the council isn't as smooth and coherent as it should be. And it sounds like something that should be or could be done bottom up, perhaps with your ward councillors. And the council has no money, but it does have convening power. So I think we should cooperate with you. And when you talk, you sound terribly sensible. And we should, we should try and build on that and see what can be done. As an artist, we'd love to see your vision of what might be at St Edward Quay, and I think that would help everyone focus and try and do something better for the future.
Thank you. You have 1 minute to come back.
Yeah, I'd love to work with the council, if possible, to work together to try and see if we can create an asset for Colchester, rather than a cost. I think when the houseboat owners are driven off, you bring in all kinds of ancillary costs from as it turns into a no man's land. And those people that squat there, they were going to be very difficult to drive off. They're going to cost a lot of money. Having people down there who are responsible and who are stakeholders in the community, I think, is essential for Colchester. And I'd be very much willing to work with the council, if that's possible, to try and help. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming along this evening. Thank you. Our next speaker is Corinna Cooper. Corinna, would you like to come forward? I think you know the procedure, so I probably don't need to go through the details, but welcome.
Good evening. A Freedom of Information request has disclosed this council spent £6,750 of public funds on a 5G safety report by Intelligence Consulting. Instead of relying on extensive peer-reviewed scientific evidence provided freely by independent experts, Council purchased a report from a commercial consultancy whose core business is the promotion of telecommunication infrastructure. In March, Councillor Willits asked the scrutiny panel to look at how this came about. Who was responsible for purchasing a corporate validation from a consultancy entrenched in the telecommunications sector? How was their independence and objectivity assessed? What evidential basis was relied upon in accepting its conclusions? I direct my next point to the Deputy Leader. Councillor King, in 2024, in an email from Nicholas Martin, you were explicitly warned of the unmitigated risks the Council is adopting. You were provided with legal advice from global law firm DLA Piper, confirming that liability for harm falls firmly and squarely upon the public body that blindly relies on ICNIRP guidelines. Despite formal notices from the EM Radiation Research Trust, this Council has continually evaded critical questions. You have failed to explain how you assessed long-term, non-thermal biological harm, failed to demonstrate any independent scientific assessment outside of ICNIRP, and failed to prove that vulnerable demographics, namely children and individuals with medical or metal implants, are protected by ICNIRP's thermal-only metric. This information needs to be provided in writing. The 5G-enabled connection tourism project, currently shelved, involved a £500,000 contract awarded to Fresh Wave Services Limited, initially for 7 years, with the option of a 5-year extension. What evidence has been provided to ensure this project provides best value or is of no risk to public health? Of concern, standard public liability policies explicitly exclude claims for harm caused by electromagnetic fields. Wandsworth Borough Council has formally admitted this. If you deploy this infrastructure, you do so entirely without insurance indemnity, potentially leading to unmitigated financial costs from future litigation that council or taxpayers can ill afford. To implement 5G with uninsurable harm caused to your own residents based on a flawed report is a dereliction of your sworn duty. This is not best value. It is a profound failure of corporate governance. Thank you.
David, would you like to come in on that?
Karina, thank you. You've been here and in full council a number of times, so it won't surprise you if I say, and we have had a number of different exchanges, both personally and indirectly through our offices, that the council's approach has to be, and always has been, alive to the evidence that's available nationally and internationally and national policy, which on 5G safety is very clear. Whether it's out of the World Health Organization or the UK Health Security Agency, or as monitored in terms of testing and monitoring itself by Ofcom, the national standards, the international standards, are the guidance to which we work, and our policy and our approach reflects that. We need to remind those who do listen, a very, very small role in the grand scheme of things. But all we do, and that led to that independent report that I know you disagree with, was to try and give assurance to the public about the safety, as best we are advised, of 5G, the emissions that concern some, and the approach of the council. And in short, we seek to be, and have been, as responsible as we can be, taking the best advice we have. I will ask our officers to have a look at the points you've raised and see if there's anything else that we can add to those earlier exchanges, but I suspect what I've said now will be the essence of the response. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Just to add, Karina, you raised some specific questions in the early part of your talk regarding the report from a commercial consultancy and issues raised by Councillor Willits. I think they do deserve a written response, so I shall ask officers to provide you with one as soon as possible, if that's okay. And if you'd like to come back for 1 minute, you are welcome to.
Purchasing safety assurances from an entity structurally aligned with the industry it's assessing represents a profound failure of corporate governance. Recognising repeated governance failures in this council, it's important to have assurance that any commercial interests won't be prioritised over public health concerns. Does the Council have any existing or upcoming projects, like the halted enabled connected tourism project, where the Council will profit from 5G infrastructure? This information is critical to allow appraisal of Council's performance with regard to its obligation for unbiased decision-making. It must be made available. If you're unable to confirm now whether council-run or council-owned corporations are involved in 5G infrastructure, a written response is required. 7 days seems a reasonable timescale for your assurances in such an important matter. Thank you.
Thank you. The 1 minute response isn't normally to ask another question, it's to respond to the answers given to the previous questions. But I will note those, and as far as I'm aware, we're not actually involved in any other projects, so I will give the answer. The answer is no, we're not. But thank you for coming on this evening. Thank you. And our next speaker is Caroline White, who is speaking on biodiversity commitment, Cymbeline Meadows and Stanway Country Park. Good evening. You have 3 minutes. The bell will sound after 2 to warn you, and then after we've spoken, you will have 1 minute to come back.
All right, thank you. I think you've answered some of the question. So the 2021 Environment Act strengthened the statutory biodiversity duty. It requires public bodies to consider how they conserve and enhance biodiversity in their decision-making and publish a biodiversity duty report every 5 years, setting out both actions taken and future plans. The Council's current report, published in February, outlines the Council's policies, including the Strategic Biodiversity Assessment, which states there is a presumption that local wildlife sites will be protected through the planning system and recognises that many sites remain vulnerable to development pressure, inappropriate management and neglect. We've seen this through the experience of Middlewich, that even nationally important sites under public ownership can face such risks. With this in mind, I would like to thank Councillor Dundas for halting the sale of Cymbeline Meadows. However, the Council's stated biodiversity ambitions conflict with some recent decisions affecting sites identified in the Biodiversity Duty Report. The report includes plans to designate Cymbeline Meadows as a local nature reserve and identifies it as a significant biodiversity project, albeit aspirational. In October, the DCE described the project as paused rather than cancelled before Cabinet approved the removal of the site from the Strategic Delivery Plan, yet the site was subsequently put on sale. It remains unclear how the ambition set out in the report will be achieved if the Council do not commit to retaining the site and securing funding to complete the project. Similar concerns arrive at Stanway Local Wildlife Site. The report commits the Council to developing habitats on the site and improving outcomes for wildlife conservation. There is, however, a proposal for a wheeled sports facility on part of the site, and I struggle to understand how this aligns with the biodiversity objectives described in the report or the SBA guidance on protecting local wildlife sites. The Biodiversity Duty Report is a statutory document and should provide an accurate reflection of the Council's intentions for conserving and enhancing biodiversity. While the report acknowledges uncertainty arising from LGR, both Cymbeline Meadows and Stanway Local Wildlife Site are presented as important biodiversity enhancement projects. My question is therefore this: how does Cabinet reconcile the biodiversity enhancement commitments for Cymbeline Meadows and Stanway Local Wildlife Site set out in the approved Biodiversity Duty Report with decisions that appear to reduce the likelihood of those enhancements being delivered?
Thank you. I'll try and respond to those. Do you want to come in, Andrea?
Entirely up to you. I mean, it spans quite a few portfolios, and I thought last week when I found out what the wording was that I would try and get a bit of coordinated stuff on that. So if you, I'll give it a go. So obviously the biodiversity assessment comes under a previous administration colleague, and I actually, confession, don't know whether it falls under mine or Darius's now, so I'm probably not as up to speed with the detail of that as you are. But what I would say categorically is the intention of that report will not change. We wrote it for a purpose, and that won't change irrespective of who's responsible for it. But I think we've highlighted earlier some of the issues with this Cymbeline Meadows Nature Reserve is that we absolutely do want to invest in it and improve it, but at the moment there's no funding been identified to be able to do that. So that may be that it has to come from somewhere completely different. Maybe it becomes a biodiversity strategic site and it takes money from other development. But whatever, we haven't done that yet, but that is the intention. And obviously Paul's explained it's not a really nice part that we're actually talking about having any sort of changes to whatsoever, but the wholesale is now on hold. And if it can't deliver what we want it to on the biodiversity spectrum, no other suggestions I suspect will come forward. On the Stanway Country Park, yes, the World Sports Facility was sent out to public consultation. I'm not even familiar with the site, but what I've been told is it's the land that they've identified to put it on is the land behind the Lakeland Centre, which has already got 106 funding secured, which is obviously a result because that's usually the hardest thing to ever do. The consultation took place this January, but potentially now it's clearer what will go ahead. It's not some huge pump track. It's actually a very small family orientated type facility that we're looking to do. We haven't yet done ecological surveys, but they will be done before anything's planned. But the site we're looking at has a very, very poor biodiversity value at the moment, because my understanding is it's a load of rubble that's had some sort of grass seed shoved on it. So actually, it's possible that we could do the construction of that and enhance elsewhere as a response to that without having any negative impact overall on the site. But that's that's parks dealing with that as a project, and then you've got obviously assets coming in, and then you've also got the environment section. So, thank you for bringing it to our attention. We'll keep an eye on all of those and how they integrate with one another. But as I said at the beginning, the intention doesn't change. We wrote that report for a reason. We have that commitment. You have our commitment on that.
Thank you. I'll just add on Stanway, because I remember I was involved a number of years ago with the building of the Lakeland Centre, and I remember many pages of soil contamination reports and the condition of the soil down there. And that bit of land that the Lakeland Centre is built on, which is right next to a bypass as well, was contaminated land, actually. It had to have a lot of work done to it to actually build on it. So I think the piece they're talking about adjacent to the Lakelands is probably not the highest quality piece anyway. The other thing about Stanway Country Park, as I understand it at the moment, it is pretty much all owned by Essex County Council. So we as a council don't actually have a great deal of involvement in the stewardship or managing of Stanway Country Park. As you probably know, it has been closed off for many years, and stage by stage it's being opened up and turned into a country park. I think the long-term plan is actually probably to turn it over to Stanway Parish Council. I think that's what I've heard mentioned, but at the moment it's primarily Essex County Council land. On Cymbeline Farm, I think you heard the answer. We're looking, biodiversity is going to be a clear set of options we're looking at around its future. So I would just say watch this space on that.
Yeah, thanks Andrea as well. So with Stanway, I can understand that there might have been some contamination or whatever, but my concern is that without any ecological assessments, a consultation was put out for a wheel sports facility, and there's an assumption there that sports facility will materialise. It's actually a local wildlife site. It's part of a local wildlife site. A large part of it will be delisted, is recommended to be delisted from within the local plan. And that fragment is the only remaining part of that local wildlife site. And do the council, so that if there's a commitment within within the biodiversity duty report to actually enhance those habitats and to improve the outcomes for wildlife conservation. I don't see how putting a wheeled sports facility aligns with that. It will increase the footfall, it will increase parking,
Thank you. I mean, I think we'll certainly make sure those comments are taken into account going forward with it. So thank you very much for coming along. Thank you. Our next speaker is Rachel Matthews, who is talking about the climate emergency. Rachel, welcome. As you probably know, you have 3 minutes. The bell will sound after 2, and then you have a minute to respond afterwards.
Good evening. Essex, along with 8 other county councils, have all scrapped, rescinded or paused their climate emergency declarations and net zero strategies. Norfolk, Suffolk and North Northamptonshire are reviewing cancelling theirs. Whatever your personal views on climate change, many authorities are concluding that these declarations have become expensive, legally risky and disconnected from what councils can realistically deliver. The IPCC has now said its most extreme scenario is not a plausible central forecast, and even Tony Blair has argued it is illogical for the UK, responsible for less than 1% of global emissions, to impose very high costs on its own businesses and consumers. Big institutional investors, BlackRock, Vanguard, HSBC, Asset Management and others have made huge profits from the net zero boom and are now withdrawing their investment. The Net Zero Banking Alliance had all 6 of the largest US banks quit, with major international lenders like HSBC and Barclays also exiting. If net zero was really necessary, would the world's largest investors really pull out of such a vital sector? Then look at the sheer policy contradiction. The government has designated data centres as critical national infrastructure to fast-track planning, even though this can override local grid capacity. The UK is currently second in the world for number of data centres, over 500. A single 100 megawatt facility consumes enough electricity for 80,000 homes. In the Thames Water region, data centres could account for nearly 30% of all new water demand, approximately 270 million litres per day. A single hyperscale facility consumes the daily water supply of 10,000 people. A recent report in The National highlighted a 300 megawatt AI data centre proposal in Scotland, where developers' own documents indicate that routine testing of around 200 diesel backup generators could release very large quantities of nitrogen oxides every year, with concentrations far above healthy limits, enough to place the site among Scotland's top polluters. Billions have been spent on cycle and bus lanes to save the planet and reduce car pollution, while simultaneously accelerating highly polluting infrastructure, creating worse air quality risks. Then we're told phasing out less efficient tumble dryers and plastic straws will save us. It's mind-blowing hypocrisy. So in the light of emerging national practice, fiscal pressure and delivery constraints, will you now review Colchester's climate emergency declaration and prove whether it remains justified, proportionate and fit for purpose? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have a go at answering this, unless I've got any volunteers. Firstly, we always keep everything under review. We're a pragmatic, sensible council. I think this was discussed at scrutiny last year, actually, and there was a good discussion about it. What I would say, though, is this council has always taken a very pragmatic approach to what it does in relation to net zero or emissions or whatever. I've seen accusations of councils doing nutty net zero things and words like that. I'm not aware that we've ever done anything like that. What we have done is taken a very strict cost-benefit approach to anything we've done. It makes sense, for example, where we have a big fuel bill or big power bill from Leisure World, to look at if we invest and we cut our energy use and we cut our energy costs, what's the payback period? Does it ultimately end up with us saving residents money? And I think pretty much everything we've done over the last few years has actually saved us money. So that's the approach we take. And if that happens to bring about a drop in emissions, well, that's a great bonus, isn't it? In terms of our general approach to environment, well, again, I think we've taken a pragmatic approach that we believe that everybody benefits from a nicer environment to live in. So if it comes to greening areas, if it comes to planting trees, well, if it makes an area nicer and it improves the quality of life, who is actually going to argue that that isn't a good thing? So, yes, we'll keep it under review. And if anybody can actually identify any tangible things this council is doing or has done or is about to do, which could be considered not particularly sensible, I will always look at them. But I'm not actually aware of anything we're doing at the moment, and I will encourage everybody to continue with pragmatic approaches to how we can actually save money and make us a more efficient council. And I think that's what we've been doing.
Well, yes, you did have a very good discussion in scrutiny, but as soon as it went back to Cabinet, and I quote, Councillor King in the November 24 said he likes to keep the spirit of the climate emergency, should still have relevance. Well, we would prefer actual facts and data. And when we did the scrutiny panel, we did offer you 4 of the world's top experts on climate, and that offer is still available. Dr. William Happer's work is irrefutable on CO2, and he has advised 5 US presidents. We've had Gregory Wrightstone, who is an author and also at the time he was director of the CO2 Coalition, and his main job was working for the IPCC, looking through, he would judge the quality of the scientific papers that came through. And we have various experts that we've offered to this council for free to come in so you really understand the net zero, because you have spent money on refurbishments on things that weren't necessary, which we covered in scrutiny. Now, the CO2 Coalition have given me these booklets. I have 8 of them for the Cabinet members. Now, if you'd like to have a look through, hold your hand up and I'll leave them at the front desk for you.
Thank you.
Out of the Cabinet, who would like one of these?
Well,
1, 2, 3.
always prepared to educate ourselves. So
Okay, well, shall I leave all 8 then? I don't want
I
to
think leave all 8. I think that would be
I will
perfect.
do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming along. Our next speaker is Councillor Chris Pearson. Welcome, Chris, and you're talking about Beerchurch Ward. I don't think I need to tell you the procedure. So I think you're...
Thank you, Leader. I wasn't expecting to be called at this point, but...
my apologies, you're on my list, so...
Yeah, it's all right. So I'm just trying to get online. So, Cabinet will be aware of the questions that I notified, which asked questions about, on the basis of the strategic plan, how much investment and resources have been put into Beerchurch over the last decade and a half. How much has been raised from Section 106 money in that time, and how much money has actually been spent in what is the second most deprived part of the city on the basis of the deprivation indicators. I am not aware of anything in my 12 years as a councillor for Beerchurch, of anything other than a little bit of money being spent on a play area, anything else being spent in my ward over that time as a councillor. And I think that it's essential that the administration takes account of the needs of Beerchurch when looking at the strategic plan and addressing health and well-being across the city.
Thank you, Chris. Who would like to pick this up? William, is this probably...
If you like. Chris, it's a wardist plea representing your residents, and where has all that Section 106 money gone? And of course you've had all the reports, so we get incredibly detailed reports, and I'm sure they've been coming for 15 years. I hate to think how big a job it would be to analyse it back, and I'm highly critical of the nature. We're forced to do it, it's not our fault. It's so granular, it's very, very difficult to see. So I think you have to give us a little bit of time to get that together. If you really want it to be done, it's quite a lot of work to do. As far as whether Beard Church is neglected or not, of course, what we benefit from things outside our wards, particularly on transport. And you've got, of course, the St Botolph's project going on, a lot of town deal money going in there. And there are other initiatives that, in my view, South Colchester should be pushing for, but I haven't heard the pressure. I think the road connections are poor, and I would hope that ward councillors would be constructive in seeing whether we could be pushing for better road facilities, a southern orbital route of some kind. So there are things that we should be pushing for, but to a certain extent it's got to come bottom up.
Thanks, Chris. Would you like to come back?
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned the Southern Orbital Road, because back when I was in ancient times, when I was a county councillor, that was on the card. So we're going back 30 years and nothing has happened since. And obviously that's not a city council responsibility, it's an Essex County Council responsibility. So I just come back to the fact that when I look, and even at the latest report, of the amount of money that has been raised in Section 106 money from limited developments recently in Beerchurch, I have yet to see a penny of that spent in my ward. So I would like to have a response about how much has actually been raised in developments across Beerchurch. I hear your point about the St Botolph's roundabout, but I don't think there'll be many of my residents who are shouting up and down about that being a positive for Beerchurch.
Would it be more sensible, Chair, to try and take a forward-looking approach on this, rather than forcing our poor officers to go back 15 years over all those granular reports? I think it would be a nightmare.
Thank you, Chris. And this has been a conversation in the air for at least a few weeks, hasn't it? And if I might remind you and our audience, of course, we have had two specific bid programmes for ward members to which the City Council, the Cabinet, done their best to be even-handed with the advice of our officers. So on play parks and on community facilities. And this is not to end up with a no-never, because it's not our job to do that. Our job is to look at need wherever we find it. But I'll just remind you, if I can, that there have been opportunities in the last year to ask for and put forward a case for investment, because our good colleague here to my left is absolutely right. To some degrees, we need the impetus to come from within the community, and leaders like local councillors are one of the best places to look for that kind of example of where there's an opportunity, where it could be found. And we've had this conversation away from here, but I just think it's right to say this out loud. Now, you will know that towards the end of the last administration, we settled on the way ahead on both of those programmes, and of course they're going to be a delight for those who are the recipients. And I absolutely understand that in terms of community facilities, we didn't receive a proposition. And if you have one now, you may have one now, we ought to take that away and see what the art of the possible is, alive to where other bids, which have been processed within the funding provided by Full Council, just see what the scope is to do better. There is a related question, Chair, which was raised by Councillor Warnes. I'm not sure if Martin is here, but it does go into the same kind of territory of trying to understand both need and response to it by the City Council. And I think the two should be combined. I'm very happy to take away and, with the help of colleagues, see what we can do. But I'm absolutely on the same place that this should be forward-looking and working with yourselves, see what the art of the possible is. But we could provide something, maybe that's more helpful than looking over our shoulder.
Just very quickly, because of the comeback.
Yeah, very quickly, yeah.
In other parts of the city, I would say that the council has taken the lead. When we're talking about the most deprived areas of the city, we have to ensure that the council is taking the lead.
Thank you, Chris. Now, we have our next speaker is Councillor Fuglu, who has submitted a written submission, I believe, Richard. So if you would like to read it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a submission from Councillor Chuffley, who intended to be here tonight but is unable to be so. And this is his statement. Once again, I would like to start my speech by wishing you all the best with your new coalition. Today, I would like to share an exciting initiative I supported in previous years and look for your support and endorsement. Back in 2023, City Centre wardens and youth wardens started weekly patrols. Following a short hiatus, these patrols recommenced in 2024. Throughout that year, I received a significant and regular volume of correspondence from residents' associations, residents, small businesses, library users and local churches. They all shared serious concerns regarding youth-related antisocial behaviour in Castle Park and the city centre. The issues at the library were covered by the Colchester Gazette, Essex Live and BBC Essex on numerous occasions, ultimately forcing the library to hire additional security staff. After meeting with senior youth workers, I agreed to allocate £850 to the Essex Youth Service to increase the number of these joint patrols. This funded 42 hours spread across 5 months, allowing for additional patrols during school holidays and enabling regular updates to the patrol routes based on feedback. These additional youth patrols made a massive difference. Not only did the number of complaints I received fall significantly, but residents and visitors also began posting positively on social media. They praised interventions such as the moment youth workers and wardens successfully de-escalated a situation where a group of 16 young people were intimidating a mother in Castle Park. Furthermore, these patrols helped our wardens and youth workers better understand the needs and circumstances of various youth groups. The monthly reports I received are packed with achievements. They highlight numerous prevented incidents at Castle Park and the city centre, as well as moving and inspirational stories, such as young people identified as not in education, employment or training, being signposted to new opportunities and successfully securing apprenticeships. These patrols also built trust in a non-judgmental way. This trust enabled the wardens and youth services to identify specific needs and make appropriate adjustments to the activities offered by the Essex Youth Service. For example, recognising a gap in lunchtime engagement led to the launch of new lunch break cooking classes at the townhouse. These classes were well attended and I was delighted to join the teenagers cooking a healthy Mediterranean vegetable tart, which brought much excitement and a sense of fulfilment to all participants. In addition to the core unfunded patrols, where wardens and youth workers engaged with 298 young people, these tailored funded patrols allowed engagement with an additional 405 young people aged 11 to 19, including young adults aged 19 to 25 with SEND. In total, a whopping 703 people were engaged with. Therefore, I would greatly appreciate the Cabinet's support to sustain and build upon this existing joint patrol initiative. A mere £850 has made a tremendous difference. Securing the Cabinet's endorsement to increase this funding to £1,578 would enable the Essex Youth Service team to deliver consistent, detached youth work alongside city centre wardens, effectively covering the remaining school holiday months. I am confident this small amount can be covered and funded by the relevant Cabinet members' portfolio, and I appreciate the interest already expressed by Councillor King. I remain ready to initiate any meetings and will greatly appreciate Cabinet's collective support.
Thank you, Richard. I thought you were going to have to ring your own bell and time yourself out there for a minute, but you didn't. I think this comes under communities, and I think Councillor King would like to reply to that.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Richard. Just on time. Look, this is a really good work by a local councillor, and it's the kind of thing that we all ought to admire, and it's personal engagement and connection. And there's no question that prevention works better than enforcement. That's very much the approach that our communities team take. It's how we already work through the Community Safety Partnership. It's a good fit for the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner funding. We have a cycle in the year. We think that we can bid quickly with a good chance of success, so we don't expect there to be a pressure on council's budgets, even though it does seem relatively small. And what I would like us to do, working with Kamal and any others, is to try and institutionalise this, so without too much red tape, ensure that we've got a yet stronger relationship between our wardens and youth workers and others, so that we engage with young people in a very productive way. and through the summer of the year. There's a particular focus on the summer holidays, but through the year and around. So I'm very happy to take that away, Leader, as something that we will look to turn into a reality. And I'll send him a personal note after this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Now that does complete the 8 speakers, but we have got 2 other people who have asked to speak this evening. They could speak under individual items, but have asked to speak under general have your say. It makes no difference to the running time of the meeting or length of time, so I'm quite happy to allow them to speak now. We have Councillor Lisa Gordis, followed by Cheryl Taylor, who's speaking about the Heart of Grinstead. So Lee, if you're here, would you like to come forward? So you have the usual 3 minutes.
Yes, and thank you, Councillor Dundas, for allowing this. I think possibly in future, maybe we make allowances with councillors, because we do want that democracy if they want to raise an issue. And obviously, congratulations on your coalition. I believe that everyone here does want the best for Colchester, and does love this city. And obviously, over that time, as Leader of the Opposition, we'll have disagreements that will be sometimes political. You know, it gets a bit heated in that chamber sometimes. Don't need the weather to warm us up. But I'm hoping that we can have some civil and constructive conversations along the year to get the best for Colchester. And I wanted to raise 3 issues that, for me, we need to start looking at. The first is the boating lake, that at the moment is full of weeds, fenced off, and looks horrible. And it's something that I and others raised on Cabinet a year ago, and we're not any further forward of what that could be. We've got the school holidays coming up soon, and for me, the castle is one of the best things we have in Colchester. Very few towns or cities have something like it in the centre. And you go down there and it just looks horrible. It's really not nice. You've already got people happy about not having a weir. Now we don't even have a boating lake. So I would like to see options put forward of what we could do there. We talked about a splash park, turn it into skating, I don't know. It needs to be something. The second one is the street drinkers, which I've raised for years now, and they're back, the nice weather's out, and nothing's being done about it. They're constantly on sitting outside, just outside Bill's, they're on Head Street, and there are other areas, and they're making the town a nightmare for a lot of parents who worry about bringing their children in, and it is intimidating, and it's not very nice. And Councillor Laws has mentioned the preachers as well, and I think that is done too loud when they are doing that as well. So we need to again work with the police on this and enforce the PSPO. That needs to be done as a priority. And the third one is cars going down the high street. We've allowed it for too long. We know that cars should not be going down there. Can we talk to the police or Essex County Council about enforcing this again? Especially with summer, we want more people walking down our streets and our high streets and enjoying it, rather than hearing someone with their terrible music blaring out, driving even slower, so we have to listen to their music because they're trying to show off. So they're 3 things that it would be really good to look at as a start of a 10 for the new coalition.
Thank you. I'll just come to number 3 first. We have a meeting, actually, as you may well be aware. There's been a change of administration at the County Hall. You may have spotted that. We do actually have some meetings this week with Essex County Council to go through a lot of our common issues. So we will make sure that I will make sure that it's added to the list. Okay. But on number 1, I think Councillor Goss is going to come in on.
You're absolutely right that the boating lake is an issue that's been ongoing for some time, and there is due a report shortly to actually outline options and costs, and it has been chased several times. I'm disappointed it's running late, frankly. That's been going on for months, and I should have that imminently. I'm just waiting for the officer that's dealing with it to come back from holiday, but it was chased only about 2 days ago, and it is chased at least weekly. So Splash Park has been fed in, as I understand, as an idea as well. So we'll come back, and the whole idea is we should consult the public. We shouldn't just be making arbitrary decisions about the boating lake. We should consult the public and get feedback. But again, we'll look at the options and costs, and of course, ultimately, it's got to be affordable, and it's got to wash its face as a business case if we suddenly spend £250,000 or whatever it might be to change the usage or repair it. So just bear that in mind when we haven't got any money.
Thank you, Martin. Just to back that up, it is very much up our agenda. In fact, David and I were talking about it this morning, and we are putting the pressure on that we need that options paper ASAP. So I was there, well, we were both there, weren't we, last weekend, and it's not a great advert for Colchester, we know that, and we need a resolution. But as Martin says, the money is always the issue. Now, on your street drinkers, David, I think that probably comes under you, I'm afraid.
Lovely. So street drinkers and preachers who exceed what's reasonable by amplification. Well, you'll be aware on the latter case of the enforcement has led to court appearance and appeal. On the former around street drinkers, it's an annual issue. I had a conversation just this morning. I'm very, very clear with our officers. The whole point about having a public space protection order is to enable us to look after our residents. Our first and last duty is them. So with every respect for those who struggle with drink, if we are, or others are able to provide them help, that's a wonderful thing. But our first duty is to keep the streets clear and behaviours appropriate. I've been explicit about that, and we will follow that up, and I intend to do so personally. We do know how many of them are. I expect to see banning, orders, removal, frankly, to the extent that we can use our full authority working with our community safety partnerships and make the streets what they should be, attractive.
Thank you, David. Councillor Lee, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you very much again. And that's really positive on the boating lake. I mean, it would be great to have a deadline of, the school holidays is when there should be something there. It should be open to the public somehow, not Harris fencing. And actually, Mr. Chilvers made a good point. Perhaps we should consult young people, because do young people want to use little pedalos anymore? I was in Dovercourt yesterday. No one was using the boating lake with nice weather. Yeah, on the street drinkers, my big concern is we're doing that fantastic work by Holy Trinity, and we don't want to be proved wrong that they're going to move there as well. It needs to be clear from day one that is a place for good, honest people to enjoy, have a nice lunch, whatever. That is what we want it for. We do not want it for people causing trouble, drinking, intimidating people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Our final speaker on Have Your Say is Cheryl Taylor, who's talking about... No, Martin's speaking under item. Sorry. Who's speaking about Heart of Grinstead. You're very welcome. You have 3 minutes. The bell will sound after 2 as a warning, and then you have 1 minute to come back after we've spoken.
Good evening. For many years, I worked in a profession where people sat down and talked. Over that time, I learned that everyone has a story about their hopes, their worries, their abilities, and their potential. And one thing became very clear. Many people already have strengths, skills, and experience. What they often need is someone willing to listen. That is why I'm interested in the Heart of Grinstead. Not because I believe communities need fixing, I don't. I see communities full of people with skills, experience, and potential that too often go unnoticed. I believe most communities already have many of the answers they're looking for. What they often lack is a way of bringing people, skills, and opportunities together. If we want truly community-led change, we must listen before deciding what people need. The people who best understand a community are the people who live there. My proposal is therefore very simple. Start with listening. Create a space where conversations can happen, a place where local people can come together, share ideas, discuss challenges, and identify opportunities. A place where people are listened to rather than directed. I call this a network of community wellbeing practitioners. Retired hairdressers, beauticians, retail professionals, business owners and others with practical experience, people skills and a willingness to help. Not because they have all the answers, but because they know how to listen, encourage, guide, and help people move forward. The purpose would not be to tell people what they need. The purpose would be to ask, what would help? What would you like to achieve? What is getting in the way? Only then do we begin building solutions that are genuinely community-led. Ideas such as mentoring, confidence-building sessions, or even a community-led wardrobe are simply possibilities. They're not the starting point. Listening is the starting point. What appeals to me about this approach is that it's not primarily about money. It's about people skills. It's about lived experience. It's about bringing together the knowledge, goodwill and resources that already exist within our communities. The resources are already here. The experience is already here. The goodwill is already here. The challenge is bringing them together, because confidence is contagious. When one person begins to believe in themselves, it often encourages others to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to come in on that? Or? No? Well, what I will just say is, Heart of Grinstead's been a long-running project. I remember when it first started. There have been challenges around it. To be fair, I've always felt that there's actually been quite a proactive engagement over what it is and what it consists of. I know the local ward councillors, as far as I'm aware, have worked quite hard to do so. There was a board set up right at the beginning which had quite a lot of community representation on it. I actually remember many years ago going to the first meeting and there was a lot of community representation there. So, I hope that if people look at it, that people will be able to see that in terms of what that project actually consists of, there has been quite a lot of community talking and there has been input accepted. As I understand it, the current stage of the project is a contract has been signed for it, for the construction. It's a design and build contract. I think there are elements of the design which have not yet been quite finalised, so there's probably still some space and time for some input there. So I would say, yes, we're listening, and if you feel that you haven't had a response, or the community is not being listened to, well, let us know. But as far as I'm aware, there has been good engagement. That's what I've seen from everybody involved in Grinstead.
Well, all I've heard over the last few years is councillors and officers actually just telling local people what they should be doing, whether it is 900 bikes or various different things. But this is actually the first time I've been in here, and a lot of you are actually talking about listening to local residents, which is quite I don't know, it's just given me a little bit of hope, because up until now all you've done is tell everybody what to do, and I think people are just getting really sick to death of that. There's an army of people that are willing to help, so I think you know sort of how to get in touch with us, but there's literally people with skills that are willing to give for free. A local community village hall, it's already there. It doesn't need to be built, it just needs to be utilised. And like with a community wardrobe, if there's someone that is not able to have something to wear to go to a job interview, then they're not going to go to the job interview. So it's about helping people in that way.
Thank you. Just before we finish, I think Councillor Jay is just going to come in.
I was just going to say, the residents panels come under my portfolio. Certainly, Councillor Scaldis was talking earlier about public consultation. It's something we're very keen on at the moment. That Castle Park upgrade, not only were adults, but we had schools come along and tell us what they wanted in the playground. There will be a really similar approach to Heart of Grinstead. I'm new into the portfolio, I don't know where we are with that, but there will be certainly a panel, I should think, on the project when residents can come along and make their views. Pam and certainly Paul will be going along to meetings where any resident can come along and raise questions and ask what the council are doing. So just bear that in mind. Listening is really, as councillors, what we do. We knock on doors and listen to residents, we answer emails. There are opportunities. Sometimes perhaps we don't communicate them very well, but just look out for them.
Thank you. Just to finish, we should have your contact details, so I'll actually make sure you're provided with our contact details. So if you've got further information you want to feed back to us, we'll always be happy to listen. Thank you. You can, yes. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I have got you down. I've got you down as wishing to speak under item 9.1. It makes no difference to the running time of the meeting, so you are very welcome to. If you'd like to come forward, please do.
Yeah, thank you for that. On top of a working day, it would be nice to be able to get home at a reasonable hour. My question, and before I do that, I would like to preface that by saying I think my colleague, Councillor Pearson, is right, that when you're looking at areas with significant deprivation, I think the responsibility to actually take a lead not only lies from the bottom up, also lies from the top down, and especially where you've got generational in-ground, deprivation, it is incumbent upon the council to look at ways in which it can help alleviate that in the long term. So my question is in line with the strategic plan priority outcomes for the period 25-27 under health and happiness and well-being around tackling the causes of inequality and supporting the most vulnerable residents by integrating, aligning and empowering communities. And I asked whether I could be provided with a listing that covers the plan period for projects undertaken showing their economic and social value for the top 5 socially deprived wards in Colchester. And I may want to ask a supplementary.
Thank you very much indeed. And if I go back to that start point, which is about the role of the council, well, of course, you're absolutely right. The council, to the extent it can, absolutely does have a responsibility to actively look, if I can put it that way, and back to the earlier conversation, the earlier speaker, to actively listen. And I'd like to think that over different administrations, as much as resources have allowed, people at that far end there being part of that process, I'd like to think that we've done that. I can only speak for the years I've been here. But it is a two-way exchange, because we do look for community leaders to shape and influence policy. It's just a reality. It's part of that listening process, the dialogue that's necessary. But as I say, I do accept that it's a two-way iteration relative to resources and responsibilities. And that's my biggest reservation when I read your interesting question, which is that, and I've had some early advice on this, and we'll give you the best answer that we can, that the reality of economic and social deprivation in all its forms, and I spent some time looking at, you put it in the context of the top 5 areas of deprivation. I know your particular focus, I suspect, is with Beerchurch. Well, the data is humbling, isn't it, in terms of the differences in life expectations between one part of the city and another. But the truth is they're shaped by many factors. They have a deep history, and shifting and moving those. When I talk to the thoughtful officers that you know and I know well, we can see that challenge, how long it takes to make a difference. But we are doing what we're able to do. We'll give you the best response that we can to your question. I can only affirm on behalf of the new administration, I'd like to think, as for the old, that within our means, the city will continue to do what it can to help as even-handedly as it's able. The populations across Colchester are alive to the fact that in some parts of the city, life is tougher than it is others. But again, as I say, it's back to that iteration, opportunity and resource, and how best we can work together. You had a supplementary.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you recognise it's a sort of two-way process, because given that in some areas you are dealing with long-term in-ground deprivation, then I do think the organisation, through its knowledge and resources, needs to be inquisitive as well as listening. And I'm glad that you take that on board, and I hope that you'll carry on taking it on board. So my supplementary is, what are you planning to review in support and intervention in the 10 areas of deprivation within the city area? Because the deprivation isn't all concentrated in one area, and there are some areas where they are suffering significant deprivation, and my ward would be one. But I suspect most councillors know of areas of deprivation within their ward, so maybe it's time to actually review where you are carrying out support and intervention, to see how clear and even-handed you can be given the circumstances.
Well, I think with respect, my earlier answer still has to apply, doesn't it? Given the complexity of our circumstances and the limitations that any one local authority has, frankly, in what it can do, this is the art of the possible. And when we go to measurement, which interests me, I'm sad like that, it is very difficult to draw an exact link between any one or any bundle of initiatives and an outcome as something so ingrained as what is often, nearly always, long-term circumstances of deprivation in all its many forms. But what I can do is say that, as I said earlier, this administration, I don't want to speak for the leader, but I'm sure we're in the same place, is committed to doing the best we can for all communities, and we will have a look at your questions and how we can best respond. Thank you.
And can I have my list, please, when it's ready?
That was my undertaking, to the extent we can do it.
Thank you, Martin. Now, just for the record, the remaining speakers I have under item 8.1, Housing External Operating Environment, I have Councillor J. Young. Under item 9.1, I have Councillor T. Young and Councillor Harris. We will call you, obviously, when we get to those items. Now, councillors, it's 26 minutes past. Do we want to take a break before we move on to the first substantive item? Would now be the good time to do it? So shall we say 10 minutes, back at 7:36? Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Welcome back. We'll pick up with the agenda, and we're going to move on to Section 8, which is housing. Section 8.1, Housing External Operating Environment Quarter 1 Update. We do have Councillor Jay Young who wishes to speak on this, but before we go to speakers, we're just going to invite Councillor Smithson to introduce the item. So, Rhys, would you like to do so?
Thank you, Chair. Before we get started, could I just ask Philip Sullivan, Chief Executive Officer of Colchester Borough Homes, to just give a quick update on the severe weather protocols we've had to introduce this week?
Yes, of course. Philip.
Thank you. Councillor Smithson has asked me this evening just to mention, because of the severe heat, with regard to rough sleepers, just to advise Cabinet that we have triggered our severe weather emergency provision, which means that we prioritise immediate shelter over strict legal liability. SWEP is an emergency safety net designed to prevent death or serious harm. CBH's outreach navigators will be providing support as needed, and our partners have been made aware.
Thank you, Philip. Rhys.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Philip. I also wanted to take this opportunity before I introduce the paper to thank my predecessor for the housing portfolio, Councillor Julie Young. I know Councillor Young is a passionate advocate for social housing and for ending the scourge of homelessness and rough sleeping. She worked tirelessly during her time as portfolio holder to improve the lives of Colchester's residents. I hope I can live up to those extremely high standards that she set, and I would like to say I will very much welcome her views and valuable insight while I hold this position. Turning to the paper in the meeting pack, which is for noting only this evening, it sets out the Q1 2026 update to the housing external operating environment. I think it is fair to say it has been an extremely busy quarter, with multiple legislative changes coming into force in the last month, and these will affect multiple parts of the Council's housing operations. I don't intend going through them all tonight, but I do want to call out a few key highlights that I think are particularly important for us. The legislative changes introduce new protections for social housing stock and for tenants, and include very, very welcome measures to protect victims of domestic abuse, and these measures will ensure that victims do not lose their homes through no fault of their own. The legislative changes also repeal unimplemented provisions from prior legislation. Again, this is really important and really welcome because it removes mandatory obligations on the council that would have come in had the legislation come in. And all the time that legislation sits there, any government of the day can simply just bring them into effect with no further consultation. By removing them, it allows us to retain our most valuable housing stock and stops us having to do things that we might not necessarily want to do. So I think that's very, very important for us. And finally, the very much long-trailed Renters' Rights Act came into effect on the 1st of May. This is quite possibly the most complex piece of housing-related legislation in the last decade. It affects landlords, tenants, social housing providers, and local authorities. The key piece of this legislation is the abolition of the no-fault Section 21 eviction. Colchester was very well prepared for this through the establishment of a Renters' Rights Act task group, and we are in a very good position to adopt all of the things we are required to do. I do want to call out that unfortunately we've seen a short-term increase in homelessness because of the introduction of the Renters' Rights Act. Landlords have taken that as an opportunity to evict tenants wherever they possibly can using the no-fault mechanism before they consider whether they wish to continue operating in the market or they wish to sell properties. We think this is a spike in evictions. We do believe it will ease as the private rental market settles into new ways of working, but it has placed extra burden on us as a local authority and on our requirement for temporary accommodation. So that's all I'd like to say, and then I'll open up for Councillor Young, I suspect, and then any questions that members might have.
Yeah, indeed. Before we open up the debate, Councillor Jay Young, Julie, would you like to join us?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations to the new leader and the new cabinet, and especially to Councillor Smithson, who's assumed the role of portfolio holder for housing. Thank you for your kind words. I'm very happy to have a meeting with you, Reece, to do a handover to make sure that you're aware of some of the things I was involved in and working on before I cease to be the cabinet member. The first thing I want to say, leader, is to congratulate the team of CBH on the Lawns Award at the LGB for innovation in temporary accommodation. This was started by the previous portfolio holder, me, Councillor Paul Smith, and I think Loman stayed longer than her retirement date to make sure it was really bedded in before she departed from the staff of Colchester Homes. The point I wanted, the things I wanted to really say, the really positive changes on right-to-buy legislation, which going forward will make a substantial difference in the retention of our stock. So that's really good news. The other thing I wanted to raise is fixed-term tenancy. So although it's no longer mandated, if I take you back to your budget amendment submitted in February 2026, one of the proposals in the list of your asks was to introduce 5-year fixed tenancies. It is possible for you to do that, but I want some reassurance that you are not going to do that, because I do not think that's in the best interest of all those people waiting in temporary accommodation for a permanent home.
Thank you, Councillor Young. I'll certainly, before we go back to Reece, I'll certainly join you in congratulating CBH in their award. I think we all would, wouldn't we? Yeah, so well done, Philip. Well done to the team. And then we'll hand over to Reece to answer the specific points.
Thank you, Chair. I agree, Councillor Young. The right to buy protections that we now enjoy are fantastic news for us and our stock. Increasing the time that residents have to reside in a property before they qualify for right to buy and reducing the discounts will go a huge way to protecting our stock in the long term. As ever with change, we have seen an increase in the number of applications for right to buy, almost inevitable given the changes that were announced, but I'm confident that as we move forward, we will retain more of our stock for longer. In response to your point around fixed-term tenancies, I think I can sum that up in a very simple word. No, we won't be introducing fixed-term tenancies during the time that I'm portfolio holder.
Thank you, Reece. Does anybody else, Cabinet members, wish to come in on this subject? No? Well, the recommended decision is subject to any questions or comments, which I think we've had. This report is for noting, so do we agree that we have noted this report? Thank you. We'll move on to item 9.1 now, which is year-end April 25 to March 26 performance report, KPIs and strategic plan delivery plan. And I will ask Councillor Jay to introduce this, and then we'll go to Councillor T. Young and Councillor Harris, who wish to speak on it.
Okay, so the 25-26 outturn KPIs shows strong delivery across core service targets and clear progress against set strategic priorities. 12 key performance indicators are green, whilst 70% of the strategic targets have already been met. I'll start by saying that these are numbers and targets, and whilst many are green and we will move over these to look at where we need to focus improvements, behind them lies huge effort and focus from our staff in both exceeding internal targets but remaining in terms of benchmarking to other similar authorities ahead of others. These include handling of benefit claims, council tax collection, days to let relet properties, and customer satisfaction with housing repairs, all of which has an obvious financial impact to the council, but more importantly delivers on priorities to residents. So thanks to all the teams for their efforts and care. I don't intend getting to the detail on numbers as these are in the papers, but for the 5 indicators in the red, we are undeniably reflecting nationwide pressures. Despite finding temporary accommodation for 362 households, the service remains under huge pressure and increasing numbers, and I can only reflect what Councillor Smithson's just said, which some of it is to do with hopefully just an uptick with Section 21. Delivery of decent home standards just missed target, and this in reality means 14 homes. Difficult for those living in them, but this has moved forward from 30 in the same position last year. This remains a real focus of the CBH team. Writing off of business rates highlights the current economic reality of running retail and hospitality businesses. Whilst rate setting remains outside of our control as a council, we support where we can. In cases where a company is insolvent, we cannot continue usual recovery processes, but do agree to structure payment plans to balance affordability, reducing the likelihood of defaulting, or placing an account on hold if a business is expecting an increase in cash flow in the coming weeks. The key thing here is that those businesses engage with the council early. The team also ensure businesses, where possible, claim all eligible reliefs. Write-off is very much a last resort option, even though it looks like a large figure. Given concerns raised by members, I have asked for further detail on sickness rates and an overview of its financial impact. The key messages I've been given are that sickness rates are currently broadly stable, and recent data shows a downward trend, with the average number of days lost dropping 6% in the last 4 months. We do, however, may remain third quartile against local authority benchmarking, but this is a mix of waste and non-waste services, and we will be up against some of those who contract out or who are entirely wheelie bin services. In terms of impact, waste services saw 1,944 days lost in a 12-month period, and a 93,000 spend on agency, which equates to nearly 12,000 a month. Backfilling of roles adds further financial pressure and a spend of 117,000, including agency spend. There are only 140 frontline posts, and the sickness rate reflects both the physical nature of the role and limited operational resilience. 30% of the sickness in waste services relates to musculoskeletal injuries, and we very much hope that this will reduce as the new waste services plan rolls out. There will obviously be some time lag in this because it's a phased rollout, so we will keep an eye on figures. A funding request is in place to increase the sickness resilience of numbers, and with a reallocation within the waste services budget and a planned drop in agency cost, there should be no huge cost to the bottom line. Figures remain a challenge, but manager early intervention and action, and with investment in occupational health and wellbeing services, there is a clear plan to improvement, and I have quite a lot of details on those. The 26-27 corporate KPIs introduce a wider range of monitoring across strategic issues, including some income and number-driven trends which have been requested. There is also now in place a live data tool allowing services and myself to monitor closely month-on-month trends and pick up issues. I have also had early conversations with the digital lead on his desire to move further forwards using internal data to drive decision making within the council. The strategic plan delivery plan is currently undergoing a refresh and will be taken to scrutiny at the end of the month and later to full council. Highlights, however, from 25-26 are that 70% of the targets have been delivered, including 527 homes, which was over the target of 380, and the 1.9 million saving in temporary accommodation costs, a result of the innovative and award-winning Beyond the Box scheme. Town Deal and Levelling Up funding has delivered St Nicholas Square in the last year and now moves to St Botolph's and Holy Trinity Church, with the wider economic benefits of the View Cinema and more units being filled at Northern Gateway, and of course our new digital forum. In terms of a cleaner and greener Colchester, the waste strategy rollout has started, green waste subscriptions are above target, and food waste collections are being extended to flats and businesses. The delivery plan you see is narrative based with strategic targets sometimes difficult to quantify, but in-place monitoring is across a wide range of reporting from the MTFF, budget, capital budget and of course the KPIs. It's my aim within my brief to make sure we have as broad a range of reporting measures as possible, especially in those areas where it's more difficult to do so, such as economic growth and health and well-being. I've already had discussions, I think he's gone, but about looking at some of those areas. However, overall a solid performance across a range of services, and I think we should be proud of what's been achieved this year.
Thank you, Alison. Very comprehensive. And just to add on business rates, of course, where the debtor is a limited company, which in many cases it is, and it's entered liquidation, then clearly we can only claim against, we're not a preferential creditor, we can only claim against assets which may be there, which in most cases is very limited. So it's not that we don't try, but we can't get money out when there is none. So without further ado, can I invite Councillor Tim Young to come and speak. Tim, welcome. Thank you for your patience. Good to see you.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Cabinet. Yeah, I want to concentrate on a couple of strands of the performance report to do with two of the strategic priorities, improving health, well-being and happiness, and growing the economy, social and benefits. I was itching to get in. You might have seen on the Heart of Greenstead project when the resident raised it, because there's been nothing but consultation on. I think we're on our third lot of consultants. We had Community 360, then we had the Active Wellbeing Society, and now we've taken it in-house. So Claire, Scott and Jake are now doing it on behalf of the council. So whether the resident was getting it confused with Pride in Place, perhaps, or Phase 2 of Heart of Greenstead, then perhaps when you have your discussion and respond to her, then maybe that can be pointed out. Carmel Crest have got the contract's been signed, and we can now move ahead with Phase 1. That's all about improving well-being and happiness. And a couple of other councillors spoke about deprivation in other parts of the city. Of course, Greenstead is the most deprived ward in Colchester. They were fairly conservative, small c, in what they said tonight, but I'm a bit concerned with a newsletter that is doing the rounds in the ward of Beerchurch, and you may not have seen it, but I think this is a financial performance question, because what is being said in this newsletter, and Councillor King and Councillor Goss and Councillor Luxford-Vaughan, as previous members of the last administration, might want to comment on this. They say money set aside for Beerchurch was moved to bail out Greenstead. Now, I don't believe that's the case as a Greenstead Board councillor, but that is what is being sent to the residents of Beerchurch. They say money destined for a Beerchurch community centre and play area on Birch Glen was raided to cover overspends elsewhere. Now, I'd like a comment from you on that, because I think either Councillor Sunnox or the Chief Executive or Haley might want to do an investigation into misappropriation of funds, which is what I think they're claiming. And the other thing they say is money was stripped from our ward to cover someone else's mess. Now, we're all guilty, I think, of putting out newsletters that flower things up a bit. That's more than flower things up. That's an accusation almost of corruption and misappropriation of funds. And I would like to see an investigation. As a Greenstead Ward councillor, if they're claiming that money was siphoned off from Beerchurch to give to Greenstead, I don't believe that's the case. I think Councillor King, what he said earlier, and what Councillor Warren spoke about in this report, was about deprivation and giving money even-handedly. But you have to apply, if there are funds there, you have to apply for it. That's what we did in Greensted and other parts of the city, and some of us have gained that. But I think that is a serious accusation against this council. I'm willing to share, I'm sure Councillor Harris would as well, that information with you that's going out in Beerchurch. So, yeah, deprivation needs to be tackled. It is being tackled, but you do need to take advantage of when money becomes available. The other point I want to raise about, as the shadow portfolio holder for economic growth, transformation and digital, is there are some pots of money about. High street rental auctions is one. That the government have got some funds. There's been one area of the country where it's about empty shop units and not letting them stay empty for more than a year. And the vacancy factor has gone down from 11% to 3%. So can we please look at that? I've asked officers, it seems to be, I've been pushed from pillar to post, but I think it's now with the right set of officers. I enjoyed what you said, Councillor Dundas, when you became leader about supporting local businesses. I don't think this council's done enough about that. So I'm perfectly willing to work with you and Councillor Jay to support that agenda, because I think the previous portfolio holder did precious little to engage with local businesses. They are not feeling confident, they're not feeling supported, and I know you said we'll see what we can do. I'm very willing to work together collaboratively with you and Councillor Jay to make sure local businesses know that this council is on their side.
Thanks, Tim. I'll pick that up in a minute, but Councillor Goss is itching, I think, to come in on the first item. I haven't seen the newsletter, so.
So I have seen a copy of it because it went through the door of Councillor Sam McCarthy, so it was on our WhatsApp group within seconds. And I think the whole Lib Dem group's eyebrows were raised, like the amazing Roger Moore, deceased Roger Moore, as his acting skill. It's just complete nonsense. I don't know where it's come from. I think the newsletter was vexatious, full of absolute nonsense, and wasn't really full of fact. And then surprisingly, it stuck a nice big dagger in Dave Harris's back as well, because I think he was personally accused of some misdemeanour or other. And I just think it's cheap, poor, and really says more about the people that wrote it, who decided to leave the Labour Party but couldn't actually be bothered to tell them. And it's just printing utter nonsense on paper, but I think the electorate will see through it and it will go straight in the recycling bin. So the one good thing, it will increase recycling rates in Colchester, hopefully. But that's about the only value add I can see from it. I think it's blatantly untrue, and I am, I would say surprised, but given recent events, maybe not.
Thank you. I don't know, perhaps to pick up on the other point, whether a copy could be provided to the Chief Executive, and I think...
I'm sure Dave is nodding, and I'm sure that both you and the Chief Executive can be availed of a copy of said newsletter.
Thanks, Tim. And we'll take a look at that. Just to pick up on, you mentioned the High Street auction rental scheme. I think we have had a look at it. It's quite an interesting scheme. I can see good points and bad points in it. I mean, to be fair, the vacancy level in Colchester isn't actually that terrible. It goes up and down a little bit, but there are quite a few areas actually of the centre of the city which are full. Lion Walk is pretty full. And actually a lot of the areas where we have got vacancies, they are former large department stores. We know which ones they are. And actually, certainly having looked at the rental auction scheme, the scheme itself basically admits it's not really designed for the huge, great former department stores. It's not really that system. So I suspect if you take them out of the statistics, our vacancies probably quite low in terms of the number of small shops and properties which are empty. And certainly actually down the high street itself, there aren't that many that I'm aware of. I think there's also, we have to be a little bit careful, because I think there are some areas where there are schemes in development and there is interest going on, that if we kind of go charging in there and say, right, we're going to sort of take over and put an auction scheme in, it could jeopardise some of them. Having said that, I've got an open mind on it. I think we'll keep an eye on it. I think if we see very specific areas of the city centre, and to do the scheme, we actually have to define what the high street is. I mean, we know what the high street is, but in reality, to do the scheme, we have to say that these particular roads in this particular area, this scheme applies. I think if we see a particular area, and I'm quite happy to listen on this, where we say this might work, then we're open-minded on it. But at the moment, I'm not totally convinced that for Colchester, it's going to work just at the moment or have a big impact, because I think it's not going to get Debenhams let. It's M&S, we know what's happening there, and that sounds positive. We've got a couple of other areas where we've got some regen projects going on, which I think actually, again, if we start getting involved there, it might jeopardise some of those. So, yeah, we'll keep it under review, and if you've got specific areas you think, well, actually, you know what, have a look at it again. In this area, this scheme will work. I'll certainly always keep an open mind. Andrea, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should be asked to comment on somebody's newsletter. I think that's between the monitoring officer and those individuals. But what I will say, and whether there's truth in that, people do exaggerate on literature. I think there's a lot of artistic license within that, but I suspect where it's coming from is the fact that the Heart of Grinstead project was exceeding the budgets that we had, and therefore, in order to progress that project and get it past and out to tender, we had to make a commitment from Colchester to shore it up, and that money was coming from the general community asset fund. So you can see how this is the fact part and how it's been exaggerated, but I think it's unfair to ask us to comment on that, and I think if Councillor Young actually thinks that there's a serious allegation, he should just take it straight to the monitoring officer and not involve us.
Yeah, just on that, I mean, I think we've agreed that a copy is going to be provided and it will go to the Chief Executive and the monitoring officer to have a look at it, and we'll let them take it from there. Just to pick up on your comments, you probably heard me say that when on the consultation for Heart of Grinstead, I was slightly surprised by that, because I think, as I said at the time, I remember the first meetings and it was a room literally full of people. There was literally every bit of the community represented there, and I'm sure those meetings have gone on many, many occasions. So I can't actually think of anywhere in the whole of the city of Colchester which has had quite so many meetings and consultations as Grinstead on the project. So yeah, I mean, maybe we need to learn from it and say, well, actually, maybe there are some parts of the community which perhaps don't feel listened to, but I think it's a rather unfair accusation, is my personal view on it.
Thank you, Chair. All I'd say is there's a difference between exaggeration and fabrication. Thank you.
Fair point, fair point. Councillor Harris, Dave, would you like to come forward?
An exceedingly good evening to you all, Leader. Thank you very much, and nice to be sitting in front of you as the Cabinet. On the customer service, on the two things I want to talk about was the G&A subject about the cemetery wall and about the rollout of the wheelie bins. Positives on both, negatives on both. So I wanted to start with the cemetery wall. I live in Beerchurch, have done for many years. My family, my friends, my relations, lots of the community are well aware of the award-winning cemetery that we have here. It is the best staff, I think, that we could ever have, that run that respectful, dignified service for our relations and our friends. And we've all got friends, I'm sure, that have been treated with the dignity and the respect they deserve. However, the wall along the 300 yards of Mersey Road is falling into disrepair. There's one section that's had a car hit it. Forget that, because that will be dealt with insurance very effectively, I'm guessing, in time. But the rest of it, the wall is falling into decay. 1856, that cemetery was started, and in 1856 we had a fence around the cemetery. And in 1890, bit of a history lesson, a wall was built there. So that wall has been there all that time. And we've not spent much on it, I'll be honest with you, we've not spent much on it. And before local government reform happens, Leader, and I know you're acutely aware and will be involved with that, I don't want to lose the fact that this wall is Beerchurch's heritage to the rest of Colchester. We have to maintain that and look after it so it's there for future generations when I go and visit relations there, my father-in-law is buried there. I've got a baby buried there. Lots of family members are remembered there. And it's such a dignified place. And we sell ourselves short if we don't do that. We sell our staff short because they are proud of what they do, and I am proud of what they do in that cemetery. So if we can make sure that we tag a part of that wall each year for the few years to come to make sure it's not left to fall down and to fall rack and roll, it's our heritage. Second issue I want to rate is wheelie bins. Big positive. There's lots of confusion, but the eagerness by which people are taking on the new recycling bins is something to behold. I'm very pleased with it. I've had lots of talks around the ward. However, the confusion is this, and I know the customer service figures that you came out mentioned it, and there's a paragraph on it, but there's Queen Elizabeth Way that's had some bins delivered and others not. Birch Glen, some bins and others not. My own Bridge Phillip Road, half of it's been delivered, others not. Now, logistically, I'm proud of our staff. I want to say that must have been a real struggle to get those that far, and we've got some great dedicated staff doing that. But we've got to make sure that we communicate that out more effectively and make sure that we know, and I've asked a question of our customer service, I haven't had the answer yet, of how many houses have we left to deliver that to, and make sure that we do right by our people, and then we can all start playing the game and increasing our recycling service. So well done, but the confusion, we need to deal with that, if that's okay for me to say. And I know Mike Lilly wants to be associated with that remark as well. So thank you very much.
I heard bins, there's only one person I can go to.
Sounds like I go to sleep and wake up thinking about. You are right, the rollout has not been perfect. Issues have been picked up where they've been spotted. We actually outsourced the rolling out of them to a third party who specialise in them, but of course they don't know Colchester intimately like our staff, and they will be the organisation that we've contracted to run until March 2027 to finish it. As I said earlier, we have done a trial to learn from the errors and also the things that went well, and that will get fed into the rollout from September. So if you could email me all the roads, etc. I know you've mentioned them on Beerchurch that have not received bins. I'll make sure you get an answer. It doesn't sound right to me. I mean, to give you an example, I had Phil Coleman, you know Phil Coleman. He had another wheelie bin turn up at his house today. They've already been rolled out. So bottom of Mile End Road's got double bins. So I'm like, what's going on? And maybe they're from Beerchurch. So we've now got to go back and collect them. You know, that's a waste of time and resource and is not effective. Equally, if we're supposed to have rolled out the whole of Beerchurch or at least Monkwick, which makes sense, why is only half of it done? So email me and I'll get you an immediate response and we'll fix where things have not gone well and push forwards to increase recycling.
Thank you, Martin. Just personally on the cemetery, I would agree with your comments. You know, it's sort of difficult to say that the crematorium of the cemetery is one of the most successful parts of the council. That doesn't sound quite right, does it? But it is actually. It's always, for many years actually, it's been one of the better run parts. It's always had very good feedback from clients. That's not, again, a bit strange thing to say, but nonetheless it has, and I think it's actually something we can be quite proud of as a council. I'll be honest, I'm not aware of the wall myself, but I am now, so I think what I will say is we will take a look at it.
Thank you, Leader. And just to remind, 14,500 hits, the comment that made on the cemetery wall, so that shows you how loved the cemetery wall in Beerchurch area. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll move on to the next item, which is strategy and the health and safety report 2025. Oh, sorry, that's a good idea. We could take a decision, couldn't we? That's even better. The recommended decision, moving back a bit, we got so excited there talking about things, we moved on, is to review the performance against KPIs and where KPIs have not been met, the appropriate corrective action has been taken. I think we've discussed that. To review performance against the strategic plan, delivery plan, and where goals or associated actions have not been completed, to show a rank status of red or amber, that appropriate corrective action has been taken. Well, that's definitely in the report. We've seen that. To note, the Cabinet had set updated corporate key performance indicators for 26-27 at its meeting in March 2026, which built on the experience and knowledge from the KPIs set in the 25-26 municipal year and reflected on the refreshed strategic plan priorities 23-26 and the Council's financial circumstances. Councillors, are we agreed that that has been done? Thank you. We have the decision. Thank you. And now we'll move on. And we'll move on to the Health and Safety Report 2025. I don't know if anybody wishes to say anything on this, but this has been through Governance and Audit on the 23rd of March 2026, and they reviewed it quite thoroughly, I seem to remember. I think I might have been there. And they made a recommendation, and they resolved that the health and safety work undertaken between January 2025 and December 25 had been reviewed, and that the proposed health and safety policy for 2026 has been considered. Members of the Cabinet, is there anything anybody wishes to add to that, or are we happy to take the recommendations from the G&A Committee? We are happy to take that, and that decision has been made, I think. Thank you. And the second item on this is the Amphora Growth and Finance Update 25-26 to March 26. Again, that went through the Governance and Audit Committee in March, on the 23rd of March 2026. Reading through it, one member there had quite a lot to say. I don't know who that was. I'm going to have words with them, but they clearly had far too much to say on the subject. But nonetheless, they did actually, I do remember there being a very good discussion, in all seriousness, about Amphora. There were some good questions asked. It went into quite a lot of detail in both the public and the private session. And I thought that it was very thoroughly scrutinised, the plan. Now, the committee resolved that the 25-26 financial statements and 5-year forecast, together with the updated Amphora growth strategy, were reviewed. They were reviewed, and I think the final financial statements are going back to G&A this Wednesday, I think I'm correct in saying. And they made a recommendation, and they recommended, or Cabinet requests, that the relevant risk register, together with the proposed mitigations in relation to the grounds maintenance contract, form part of any future reports which are presented to it by Amphora. And I think the reason for that recommendation is obviously we have a number of key, or increasing number of key council services now run by Amphora, one of which will be the grounds maintenance contract. And I think the recommendation or thinking was that that needs to appear on our risk register as a key part of the service we provide. So I'm quite happy to accept that recommendation. I think it makes total sense for that to be incorporated in our risk register. Has anybody got anything else they wish to say or add to that? In which case, are we... Oh, sorry, Councillor Laws.
Thanks, Leader. I just wanted to just comment just broadly about Amphora, because part of my portfolio is looking at all things cultural within the city, and Amphora events, or Colchester events as it's known, put on a very, very strong, ambitious set of events in the summer series in Castle Park and other activities. And I proactively met with the head of events and the MD last week just to get to know each other better, and I'm incredibly impressed by the work. As a consumer, I've always been impressed, but I've been endeared even further to understand what they're doing, how they're collaborating with the business community, all of our different venues within the city, and how they're also very interested in not just what happens inside the Roman walls, but beyond that as well. So I'm very impressed. I will keep an eye with keen interest, because last year I got to miss one of the gigs in the park I wanted to go to because I was on holiday. But a point I just want to plant the seed of, if you indulge me, is that with LGR coming up, there is going to be some opportunities there, isn't there? And I think we need to be mindful of that so that we can facilitate conversations at the outset. Because, I mean, you've got 2 theatres in Clacton, there's, I think, 2 theatres in Braintree. They're all different sizes and different offers. But the Clacton one's quite interesting because it's got some other office building stuff going on in there. And it's a very, very big theatre. So, look, I just think there's opportunities there in the long run that we just need to open our eyes to. But I'm suitably impressed though I don't study the numbers like some of you will do, but on the surface, very impressed.
Thanks, Darius. Actually, having spoken to Simon today, I'm reassured that actually Amphora are very conscious of LGR, and they are viewing it very much as an opportunity rather than a threat, which I think is very much the right approach to take. But Rhys, as a former, you've already made the declared your interest on this, so as a former board member, please.
Yeah, just to build on what Darius has just said there, Tendring and Braintree don't have anything like Amphora, and they certainly don't have anything like Amphora events, so we are incredibly well positioned with the new unitary coming on stream that we can give something to them and we can lead on something straight away, and because they don't have it, that's a massive growth opportunity. You know, we're talking 20 million of economic input into the Colchester today. There's no reason why that can't be a 50, 60 million in the next 5 years easily. And I know Simon has amazing plans and is super motivated, and with a really strong board offering him appropriate challenge, I just see Amphora has the potential to just keep going and going and going. We should all be really proud of what we've done with that company.
Thanks, Rhys. Yes, I would agree with that. So if nobody else wishes to speak, we'll go to the recommended decision, which is to review and make recommendations to Cabinet on the Amphora Growth Fund, which was the report to G&A. They have made their recommendation with that added recommendation for the risk register. So are we agreed that we are accepting that? We are. Thank you very much. So we move on to 10.3, which is appointments to external bodies and council groups. The council makes a number of external appointments. The list is in the agenda pack. What I would just say is myself and David, we've had some long discussions over this, haven't we? Well, not that long really, but gone backwards and forwards on a few people. What we've tried to do actually is take a pragmatic approach to it, particularly where, you know, sometimes it's the habit of administrations. They just literally appoint all their own people to roles. What we're trying to do actually is particularly where something's working. We haven't taken a let's just tear it up and start again when somebody's working approach. So we have tried to incorporate people from other groups and give a fairly good balance to it. We've kind of looked at more picking who would be the right person to do this role rather than just saying we're going to pick our own people. That's what we try to do, I think, isn't it? So, Cabinet members, has anybody got any comments on this, or shall we just approve it as taken?
Chair, just one thing to clarify. What I think there was an outstanding appointment for the member development group from the Progressive Independents, and just to confirm that they've nominated Councillor McLean.
Excellent. So we have almost a full house. I think there is one appointment which is the Abberton Rural.
The Abberton Rural Training remains outstanding, but we can follow that up outside.
Okay. Well, with the exception of the Abberton Rural Training Trust, I think it's called. Are we agreed? We are. Thank you very much. So moving on is progress and responses to the public, which I think is just for noting. I think I'm correct in saying. Unless anybody wishes to say anything on this, are they duly noted? They are. Okay, and we do have the option of going into private session. I believe the only reason we'd want to do that is to discuss something on the Amphora report. I'm not aware of anything we wish to discuss, so we will not do that. And that completes the agenda for tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Visiting councillors, those who left, and members of the